He was bullied for being the poor black kid in a rich school, mocked, laughed at, even recorded for TikTok. But what those kids didn't know is that his dad wasn't just any man. He was a decorated Army colonel. And when that man walked into the school in full uniform, the entire room went silent. It started quietly, almost too quietly. There were no big fights, no screaming, no obvious drama, just quiet looks, quiet laughter, and quiet cruelty. Year old Elijah Thomas had only been at Ridgewood Academy for a day, and already it felt like a lifetime. He was the new kid, the only black boy in his entire grade. And this wasn't just any school, it was one of the most elite private academies in the state. A place where kids arrived in Teslas and Range Rovers, where last names carried weight, and where designer sneakers mattered more than your grades. Elijah? He walked through those gates with off-brand shoes, a backpack 2 years out of style, and a quiet confidence he had learned from his parents. Speak less, observe more, and always hold your head high. But at Ridgewood, being different was dangerous. From the moment he stepped into the lunchroom, it began. He scanned the room, tray in hand, searching for a place to sit. Most tables were already full, some literally, others by silent social rules no one said out loud. He spotted one empty seat near, a group of boys laughing loudly over something on their phones. He walked over and asked, "Mind if I sit here?" The laughter stopped. Heads turned. A few smirks appeared. Then Preston, the ringleader with perfect hair and a last name tied to half the buildings on campus, leaned forward with a crooked smile and said, "Hey, did your mom win a scholarship? Or something? Or did you just sneak past security?" The whole table erupted in laughter. Elijah froze. Not because it hurt, it did, but because he'd heard it before. Different schools, different versions, same tone, mocking, entitled, ugly. He didn't give them the satisfaction of a reaction. He simply nodded, turned, and walked out of the cafeteria. But here's the part that stuck with people later. He didn't cry. He didn't snap. He didn't even look back. He found a quiet hallway bench, sat down, and ate his lunch with dignity. Alone, but not defeated. What those boys didn't know, what they couldn't possibly imagine, was who Elijah really was. Where he came from, and who raised him, because while they laughed at his clothes, his silence, and his skin, they had no idea his father was a United States Army colonel, a man of medals, missions, and real respect. And they were about to find out, in the most unforgettable way. But back then, in that moment, Elijah just sat and chewed his sandwich. Behind his calm eyes, a storm was waiting, because this wouldn't be the last time Preston opened his mouth. And the next time he did, the whole school would be. The bullying didn't stop, it got worse. Way worse. It started with the whispers. Quick, sharp words, tossed behind his back when they thought he couldn't hear. Scholarship kid. Probably lives in a one-bedroom. Bet. His dad's in jail. Elijah heard it all, every lie, every ugly stereotype, but he never reacted. He just kept walking, kept breathing, kept showing up. But the whispers turned into something more physical. One morning while walking to class, Elijah felt a sharp thud. His books smacked out of his hands, scattering across the hallway. Laughter erupted as he knelt down to pick them up. "Oops," Preston said with a smirk. "Didn't see you there." And everyone just kept walking. Not a single teacher stopped to help. Not one student said a word, but it didn't end there. The next week, someone started recording Elijah during gym class, posting clips to TikTok with captions like G.I. Joe's charity case trying to do push-ups. Guess basic training skipped. This one. The videos got likes, shares, even comments from other students at the school. Elijah knew exactly who was behind it. But what could he do? Preston's dad wasn't just rich, he was powerful. His name was on the new science wing, the football scoreboard, and even a scholarship fund, ironically the same one Elijah was probably attending the school under. It became a game for Preston and his crew. Hide his PE clothes before gym class. Accidentally spill water on his homework. Whisper wrong hallway every time he walked past their lockers. And yet, Elijah never fought back. He never yelled, never threw a punch, never ran home crying. He just watched, quiet, focused, strong. It confused them, frustrated them, because they wanted a reaction. They wanted the angry black kid stereotype, the outburst, the meltdown. But Elijah gave them nothing. And that silence, that calm, it was power. Because what they didn't know, what they couldn't possibly imagine, was that Elijah had been raised by a man who had taught him exactly how to face the world. His father, Colonel David Thomas, a leader, a soldier, a man who had stared down real enemies, not teenage bullies. And even though Elijah never said it out loud, he carried his father's words in his heart. Don't let small minds pull you into small fights. Walk with dignity. Let your strength speak for itself. So Elijah waited, not for revenge, for the right moment. A school assembly, a boring one. Just another leadership talk in the gym that no one wanted to attend. Students dragged their feet to the bleachers, rolling their eyes and checking their phones. Preston even joked, "Bet it's another old dude talking about hard work and dreams. Snooze fest." But this assembly, this one was different. Because the man walking through those doors in the next few minutes, he wasn't just any old dude. He was the man who had trained elite soldiers. The man who had led missions in war zones. The man who had raised Elijah to stand tall while the world tried to bring him down, Colonel David Thomas, in full military uniform, and ready to deliver a message Ridgewood Academy would never forget. Watching. Ridgewood's monthly character and leadership assemblies were usually background noise, just another item on the schedule that students slept through, scrolled past, or rolled their eyes at. But this Friday was different. It didn't start that way. Just the usual announcement over the PA, the principal reading off a bio like it was pulled straight from a dusty file. A decorated leader, a lifelong servant to his country, and a man of honor. Most students barely looked up, until they saw him. When Colonel David Thomas walked through the side door of the gym, the room changed. Instantly. Every eye lifted, every phone lowered. He wasn't just tall, he was commanding. He wore a crisp army dress uniform that gleamed under the fluorescent lights, with polished combat boots that echoed with each step. His chest was a wall of medals, silver, bronze, red, blue, awards earned on battlefields the students had only seen in movies. His shoulders were squared like he carried history. His face was calm, strong, and serious. He walked to the podium with perfect posture, removed his hat with respect, and waited. Preston, sitting just 2 rows behind Elijah, nudged him with a smirk and whispered, "Look at this clown. Probably your uncle or something." But Elijah didn't flinch. He didn't look at Preston. He just smiled, a small, knowing smile. Then Colonel Thomas spoke, and the gym dropped into a silence so deep you could hear sneakers squeaking in the hallway. "Good morning," he began, his voice clear and powerful. "My name is Colonel David Thomas. I've served in the United States Army for over 22 years. I've led missions in 3 countries. I've trained thousands of soldiers. I've jumped from planes, marched through deserts, and received honors for courage under fire." You could hear the shift in the room. The kids sat straighter, the teachers leaned in. This wasn't just another speech. This man had seen things, done things. And then, just as the audience began to understand who he was, he changed the tone. "But today," he said, locking eyes with the students, "I'm not here just as a soldier. I'm here as a father. My son Elijah is a new student here. Some of you may have already met him." Heads snapped around. The name echoed silently through the bleachers. Elijah? The quiet kid? The one who sat alone at lunch? The one they called names, shoved in hallways, and recorded on TikTok? Preston's smirk evaporated. His face dropped. His mouth opened, then closed. He turned slowly and looked at Elijah, who sat quietly, still smiling, not saying a word. Colonel Thomas didn't need to raise his voice. He didn't need to point fingers. His presence alone made the message crystal clear. This boy you teased, ignored, and judged, he is the son of a warrior, a leader, a man who's risked his life to protect your freedom to sit in this gym. And as Colonel Thomas continued to speak, About discipline, courage, respect, and the true meaning of leadership, the audience hung on every word, not just because he was powerful, but because he was real. He didn't lecture. He inspired. He didn't shame. He elevated. And the entire school knew, in that moment, they had grossly underestimated the boy in the second-hand backpack, because behind that quiet strength stood a man who had led armies, and now stood proudly behind his son. And it came one ordinary Friday afternoon. Colonel Thomas paused at the podium, letting the silence weigh heavy in the gym. Each word he spoke cutting through the air like a blade sharpened by years of discipline and truth. I raised my son to be strong, to stay calm under pressure, to never start a fight, but to never back down from injustice, he said, his voice firm but not angry, more like a man speaking truth with unshakable conviction. He told me what's been happening here. The jokes, the names, the silence from adults who should have said something. His eyes scanned the crowd, but then they landed with precision on the front row, where Preston sat frozen, wide-eyed, suddenly very small in his expensive hoodie and overpriced sneakers. You see, courage doesn't always look like a uniform. Sometimes, he said, his tone lowering, more personal now, it looks like a kid walking into school every single day with his head held high, knowing no one wants him there, knowing he'll be laughed at, ignored, filmed, and still choosing to rise. The entire gym was still. You could hear kids breathing. The sound of someone shifting in a plastic seat felt loud. That kid, the colonel continued, his voice rising just enough to give the words weight, is braver than most men I've served with. Because real strength isn't in how loud you are, it's in how much you can take without becoming bitter, how much hate you can absorb without returning. That's my son, Elijah. A few students looked at Elijah now, not with mockery, but with guilt, with curiosity, with quiet awe. Even some teachers looked uncomfortable, maybe realizing for the first time that they'd been part of the silence. Colonel Thomas straightened his back and looked out over the sea of stunned faces. I don't want apologies, he said firmly. My son doesn't need pity. What he needs, and what every single child in this school deserves, is respect. And if you can't give that, if you don't know how to treat someone with decency just because they're different, then maybe it's not him who doesn't belong here. The gym was silent again, but now it was different. It wasn't boredom or indifference. It was realization. It was discomfort. It was truth sinking in. No one dared to laugh. Preston sat still, face flushed, avoiding eye contact. His usual smugness was gone. Later that day, a few kids came up to Elijah. No big speeches, no sudden friendships. Just quiet words like, hey man, what's up? Or, you want to sit here? That's all he ever wanted. Basic human decency, respect. And after the assembly, that's exactly what began to change. Even the principal called Elijah and Colonel Thomas into the office, not to smooth things over, but to say thank you, to say they were listening, and maybe, just maybe, they were ready to do better. Elijah didn't say much. He didn't have to. His father had spoken for him. And the message was loud and clear. Sometimes the quietest kids carry the strongest legacies. And sometimes all it takes to shake a school to its core is one proud dad in uniform and a son who never backed down. By Monday morning, Ridgewood Academy felt like a different school. The air was heavier, quieter. Students who once laughed at Elijah now glanced his way with wide eyes, uncertain what to say. The usual whispering in the hallways? Gone. Even the teachers carried themselves differently, like they were finally paying attention. The change had nothing to do with new rules, and everything to do with what happened that Friday. Colonel Thomas's speech had struck a nerve, not just in the students, but in the adults, too. The principal, who once ignored Elijah's complaints, sent out a school-wide email acknowledging the failures in leadership. It was the first time anyone in power admitted something was wrong. But that wasn't all. Preston's dad, the same. Man whose money gave him a free pass to bully others? He was quietly removed from the school board by Monday afternoon. Turns out, Elijah wasn't the only student who had been targeted. Parents of other kids came forward too, emboldened by Colonel. Thomas's powerful words. The school could no longer hide behind legacy and wealth. They had to act fast. As for Elijah, the same boy who once walked the halls like a ghost now couldn't go a few steps without hearing his name, in a good way. Kids who had ignored him just days before were now nodding at him, giving him fist bumps or asking, "Hey, want to sit with us at lunch?" A few even apologized. Sincerely. Some teachers, the ones who had looked the other way, took him aside to say they admired how he handled himself. They told him they'd do better, that they were proud. But here's the thing. Elijah didn't let any of it go to his head. He still wore the same simple hoodie, still carried that old, beat-up backpack, still walked with quiet confidence, not arrogance. He didn't seek revenge. He didn't become someone new. He just became more of who he already was, calm, focused, and strong, just like the man who raised him. When a local reporter visited the school to cover the story, they asked Elijah how he managed to stay so composed through everything, the bullying, the jokes, the silence. His answer? He looked right at the camera and said, "My dad always told me, when someone tries to tear you down, let your strength speak for you. I didn't have to fight back. He showed them who I am." That one sentence went viral on its own. Screenshots of Elijah's words were posted all over social media, shared with hashtags like "We Strengthen Silence" and "Elijah Strong." But the most powerful part wasn't the attention, it was the message. Elijah didn't throw a punch, he didn't yell, he didn't even raise his voice. He stood tall, and in doing so made everyone else look up. What started as bullying turned into a movement. A quiet boy reminded an entire school, an entire community, what real strength looks like. Not money, not power, not noise, but courage, character, and dignity. That's the real kind of strength we need more of. Not the loudest in the room, not the one who throws the hardest punch, but the one who knows who they are, and never lets the world shake that. If Elijah's story inspired you, drop a comment below and tell us, have you ever had to stand tall in silence? We'd love to hear your voice. Like this video if you believe respect should be earned through character, not privilege. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful, real-life inspired stories just like this, because sometimes the quietest heroes make the loudest impact. Stand tall, stay kind, and keep rising.